This might be the most motivated unemployed person in movie history. Like, we open on this guy, Lou Bloom, and within the first 10 minutes, he's stealing fence wire to sell for scrap metal. He's trying to fast talk his way onto a construction job, and he's pitching himself with the same kind of energy usually reserved for people who already have had 3 espressos and mapped out their entire 5-year plan on a whiteboard at 6 a.m. He doesn't have a job. He doesn't have any prospects. And the whole movie is basically what happens when someone like that discovers a career they're actually good at. Hey, welcome back to Mildly Overreacting. Today we're talking about Nightcrawler, the 2014 crime thriller written and directed by Dan Gilroy. And honestly, I'm a little annoyed with myself for not watching this film sooner. I've obviously been hearing about this film for years, and for years I kept putting it off. I don't really have a good reason. Sometimes you just let a movie sit in the queue until enough people look at you like you're missing out on something, and you finally crack. That happened, and now we're here. I came into this film with pretty high expectations. Again, I've been hearing about it for years from people whose taste I actually trust, and Jake Gyllenhaal is in it, which never hurts. Those two things together made it feel like something I had no real excuse to keep putting off, and I'm glad I finally stopped. So a quick setup without any major spoilers, as always. The film follows Lou Bloom, a guy with no real work history, no social ties, and an alarming ability to talk about professional development. He stumbles onto a crime scene one night and discovers the world called stingers, freelance cameramen who race to accidents, fires, and violent crimes to sell the footage to local news stations. Lou sees this and immediately thinks, yes, this is for me. He buys a camera. He learns the job in about 48 hours and starts building what he keeps referring to, in total sincerity, as his business. That's the whole film. A man building his business. A business that involves filming dead people before police even get there. Let me start with what makes this movie work so well, because there are a few different things going on and they all come together in a way that feels genuinely crafted. The first and most obvious is Jake Gyllenhaal, who's operating at a very high level in the entire film. He lost something like 20 pounds for the role, and you can really tell. Lou Bloom looks like somebody who forgot to eat because he was too busy optimizing something. Everything about how Gyllenhaal carries him is slightly off. The posture, the stillness, the way he smiles just half a second after he should. You'll be in the middle of what looks like a completely ordinary scene, and then there's this low hum of wrongness underneath it that you just can't quite place. Gyllenhaal just plays this role absolutely perfect. Some of the supporting actors do really solid work as well, though. Brianne Russo is excellent as the news director Lou ends up selling his footage to. But whenever Lou is on screen, which is pretty much always, you're locked in. Even when he's doing something relatively mundane like negotiating a contract or explaining the terms of an internship, there's this pull to just watch him talk. He makes Lou feel like a real person, which is an achievement and also the thing that makes the film so unsettling. Because Lou's not a person you should find impressive. He's manipulative, he has no ethical guardrails, and as the film goes on, the things that he's willing to do for a good shot get progressively darker. And here's the trick the film pulls. It lets you be impressed by him anyway. Not because it's endorsing anything he does. It very clearly isn't. But because Lou is so driven, so focused, that you keep catching yourself thinking, okay, but that was actually a pretty smart move. And then you feel weird about it, which I suspect is the intention. The character himself is one of the most memorable I've come across in a long time. What makes Lou so fascinating, and I keep coming back to this, is the way that he talks. He talks like someone who only ever learned English from a TED Talk. He'll say something like, I think what really defines me as an individual is my commitment to goal setting and my willingness to adapt. And he'll say that with complete conviction to somebody he's effectively doing something terrible to. And the gap between the words and the reality is so enormous that it becomes almost funny. Not in a joking way, in a way that makes you laugh and then immediately feel unsure about yourself. At a certain point, you realize Lou has absorbed so much of that corporate self-help language that has become his entire mode of communication. He doesn't use it ironically. He's not performing anything. He just generally thinks about himself and his work through the framework of hustle and growth and leveraging opportunities. And the contrast between that framing and what he's actually doing is where a lot of the film's dark humor lives. And there is humor in this movie. It's not a comedy. But there are scenes that are really funny in the most uncomfortable possible way. And most of them are Lou saying something with total professional calm that has no business being said professionally. And the movie never has to wink about it. It just lands. Let's talk about the atmosphere, because that's the other thing Nightcrawler does very well. The film is set in Los Angeles at night. The cinematography is doing a lot of heavy lifting here. Everything's so slick, neo-lit, wide and slightly cold. And then there's this sense that the city itself is kind of predatory. It suits Lou perfectly. He belongs in this version of LA. But it's not just the visuals. The whole film has a feeling of tension that's hard to shake even in quiet moments. Simple conversations feel loaded. You're always waiting for something to tip over. A lot of that comes from Lou's unpredictability. You never quite know where the line is for him. And the movie's very careful not to tell you until that line's been crossed. So you're always a little on edge. Not in a jump scare way. In a way where you're paying very close attention and you don't entirely know why. There's a scene that I won't go into too much detail, but Lou has a fairly straightforward back and forth with his assistant. Nothing dramatic is happening. They're talking about terms. And it's one of the most stressful scenes in the entire film because of how Lou handles it. That's the kind of thing this movie does really well. It uses the texture of ordinary conversation to make you feel things that the content of the conversation doesn't necessarily justify. The news industry angle is worth talking about because the film has a pretty sharp perspective on local television news and the economics behind it. Rhiannon Russo's character Nina is caught in the same machine as Lou, just from the other side. She needs footage that drives ratings, and Lou provides footage that drives ratings. There's a scene where Nina explains very bluntly the kind of content her station is looking for, the demographics, the geography, the specifics of what plays, and it's delivered casually enough that it takes a second for the full weight of it to register. The film uses Nina to show that Lou didn't create the market he's exploiting. He just found it and moved in faster than anyone else. Which brings me back to what makes Lou so effective as a character. The film never lets him off the hook. It doesn't try to explain him, or give him backstory that softens things, or suggests he's secretly something other than what appears on screen. He is exactly what he seems to be. The film just asks you to spend 90 minutes with him, and trust that the experience itself will make the point, and it does. Jake Gyllenhaal's physical transformation adds a lot to that. Lou looks like somebody that's optimized themselves at the expense of something human. He's lean and precise, and always slightly too still. It's a performance that works in layers. There's a surface layer, which is Lou doing his pitch, presenting his professional self, and managing relationships. And then there's everything underneath that you catch in quick flashes. The moments where the mask shifts slightly, and you see that there's nothing underneath the mask except more mask. Gyllenhaal makes that feel effortless. He's on screen for basically the entire runtime, and never loses the thread of the character. Not for a second. The pacing is another thing I want to mention briefly. The film moves very well. It doesn't overstay anything. Scenes end at exactly the right moment. You never get the sense of there being any filler. It has the kind of momentum that suits the subject, which is, in the end, a guy who is very good at moving fast and not looking back. My only minor note for this movie is that the supporting characters could have used a little bit more room to breathe. Riz Ahmed is doing generally great work as Rick, his assistant, and his arc feels slightly compressed compared to what it could have been. It's a small thing in a movie this strong, but it's the only place where I thought, yeah, I'd like to see a little bit more there. And that's really the only criticism I have for this entire film. Nightcrawler is a really confident film. It knows exactly what it's doing from the first scene to the last, and it commits to the bit completely. It's the kind of thriller that works on you while you're watching it. I kept thinking about it the next day. Kept thinking about specific shots, specific lines, specific moments where I wasn't sure whether to be impressed or horrified, and then realized that was exactly the point. If you've been sleeping on this one the way I was, go watch it. Ideally at night. It's definitely better at night. Something about watching this film set in this particular version of nighttime LA, when it's actually dark outside, it just works better. I give this movie a 4 out of 5. Jake Gyllenhaal gave one of the most watchable performances I've seen in a long time. The atmosphere is dense enough to cut through, and Lou Bloom is a character I generally don't think I'll ever forget, which is maybe the most unsettling compliment I've given anyone recently. Alright, that's the video. If you've already seen Nightcrawler, let me know in the comments what you thought. And if you haven't, let me know what movie I should do next. Subscribe if you want to see the next video, like if you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one.